Hey, it's Sohla el-waylly, and today I'm in the Miele Experience Center, and I'm going to show you how to make a milfouille with strawberries, rose, pistachios. It's the perfect summery dessert. This dessert is a Napoleon, a layered situation, but traditionally for a dish like this, you'd use puff pastry. So instead I'm going to use Phyllo dough, which is going to make it a little bit lighter, and it's going to be more about the custard and the fruit. So the first thing I'm going to do is steep some vanilla into milk and cream for our custard. I'm going to bring them to a simmer along with some sugar and salt, and then scrape in half of a vanilla bean. The flavor takes a little bit of time to steep, so I think the best thing is to do this overnight, but 30 minutes is cool too. You know, if you need to have pudding today, I understand. I've been there. Now, there's this really cool trick that I learned from one of my pastry teachers. When you're heating up milk and cream on an induction, if you sprinkle the sugar across the bottom like this and do not stir it, it'll actually settle along the bottom of the pan and prevent the milk and cream from burning. So you can just crank up the heat and not worry about it, and it'll come to a simmer without scorching. But this only works on an induction, so gas burner people, do not try this at your home. Okay, vanilla pod. So I'm just gonna use half of this pod. Vanilla is super expensive, so I try and just use as much as needed. So we're just gonna split this in half, and you can save the other half for later. I have a vanilla problem. It's my favorite flavor. Yeah, aroma. Is it a fruit? It's my favorite vegetable. So whenever I split it in half, and I'm gonna use the other half later, I split it crosswise, plastic wrap that end, and then save that for later. Now we're gonna split it lengthwise, and then scrape out the seeds. Just like that. And I'm gonna put the pod in here too, because there's a lot of flavor in the pod as well. A little bit of salt, and then I'm just gonna let this come to a simmer. The sugar has settled to the bottom. It's protecting the cream and milk from burning. And this Miele cooktop, it's so even and fast. I see movement already happening. But now the whole thing is going. Now I'll stir. And you can just steep this for 30 minutes if you need to make your custard today. But for best maximum vanilla flavor, I'm gonna steep this overnight. I'm gonna cover it and take it to the fridge to cool. All right, so now I'm gonna make my custard. I'm gonna bring my milk and cream mixture back up to a boil, and then we're gonna temper it into our eggs. So while this heats up, I'm gonna crack a couple eggs into this bowl. This time, because I've already stirred up the sugar, I am gonna get in here periodically and make sure the bottom doesn't scorch. All right, so I'm gonna whisk up my eggs with my cornstarch. The cornstarch is gonna help thicken up our pastry cream. Okay, eggs beaten up, cornstarch going in, and we're just gonna whisk this until it's nice and smooth, and that's gonna make sure we don't have any lumps. By tempering, we're just gonna add this hot milk mixture slowly into the eggs. By doing that, we'll make sure that they don't curdle. If you just add the hot to the cold too quickly, boom, you're gonna have scrambled eggs. That's a different episode. My milk is boiling. I'm gonna stream it in. You could also do this with a ladle. If you feel more comfortable, just add one ladle at a time. But I feel comfortable just going for it. If you're whisking quickly, you can add the milk pretty quickly. And you really just need to add like about half of it to make sure that it's like roughly warmed up. Not just warming it up, but we're also diluting the eggs so they're less likely to curdle. Now I'm gonna add this back to the pot with the rest of my dairy, and we are gonna just vigorously whisk. You wanna whisk the whole time, and we're gonna cook this until you see bubbles, and then once you see bubbles, you need to cook for a full minute. Eggs have this thing in them called amylase, and it will break down starch. So you might have a really thick pudding, but if you don't cook the pudding for a whole minute, you won't deactivate that amylase. So you'll put your custard in the fridge, and then a day will pass and it'll liquefy. It's like the craziest thing. But here you can see it's thickened. I've gotten a couple of bubbles. The cornstarch is hydrated, but we're still gonna keep cooking for a whole minute and make sure that amylase is totally denatured. It's like the saddest thing if you make like a beautiful banana cream pie the day before people are coming, and then your dinner party happens, you slice that pie and it's just liquid. This has happened to me. So now I'm like, sometimes I get really paranoid and I just set a timer because 1 minute is longer than you think. Okay, so my mixture has boiled for 1 full minute, and now I'm gonna pass it through a strainer. So if there's any little lump of cornstarch, you know, sometimes there's that little tough bit from eggs called chalazi that will never break down. it'll catch it right now. So we'll make sure that it's gonna be super smooth. You don't want like unexpected texture. Ooh, no, that's not fun. But your little pretty little speckles from the vanilla bean, they're gonna still go through it, so don't worry about that. Now this vanilla bean, it's not done yet. Vanilla beans, they never die, they never finish. That's why they're so amazing. Wash this off, let it like sit on the counter to air dry, and then there's so much you can do with it. Pop it in sugar, pop it in honey, pop it in maple syrup. Maple vanilla is so good together. Oh, even stick it in your bag of coffee beans. If you want a little vanilla coffee. Vanilla, just like, it just keeps giving. Okay, so now we need this to cool completely, and puddings and custards, they'll always form a little skin. If you're into that, leave it, but I don't like that. I do not like unexpected texture, okay? So I'm gonna cover it with plastic wrap. So you need to press it right up against the surface. Take a second, make sure you have full contact. Okay, so now I'm gonna put this in the master cool fridge to chill for at least 2 hours or up to 3 days. The M-Touch oven is preheating at 375 and it's got the crisp function on. And now I'm gonna make my phyllo. Had it thawing overnight in the master cool fridge. I think a lot of people find phyllo to be a little scary because it can dry out and crack, but I think the biggest thing is thawing. Don't rush the thawing. I always do it like slowly overnight in the fridge. I don't like to do it at room temperature. I find that it's just much more flexible and pliable if you let it take its time to thaw. And it does dry out, but if you move quickly, you'll be fine. If it breaks and it cracks, just, you know, add another layer. It'll be okay. So I want to put 8 even sheets of phyllo on this pan. So I'm gonna check and see if I need to trim it. You don't need it to be perfect. We just want it to roughly fit into the pan. For this brand of phyllo, I need to trim 1 inch off the top. I've seen some smaller sheets where you might need to lay 2 side by side to fill the pan. Okay, now this bit, you can save this. Save all of your like ends or dried bits of phyllo in the freezer, and then you can treat it like a shredded phyllo for something else later. But today we want nice sheets. So I'm gonna layer my phyllo with pistachios, cardamom, sugar, and salt. I was really inspired by like baklava flavors. Even though it's actually not that much pistachio compared to a baklava, I found that it really, like, the aroma permeates all the sheets of phyllo and it's really nice. So I've got sugar, pistachios, cardamom, and salt. I'm just gonna toss this, and I'm going for 8 sheets of phyllo, and like every other sheet of phyllo, a layer of nuts. So it'll be 3 layers of nuts. But honestly, it's totally arbitrary if you want more layers of phyllo, if you want less. The one thing I did find, if you put too much nuts in between all the layers, the nuts will just fall right out, so don't overdo it there. So now we're gonna butter up our sheet tray. So the key to phyllo is just every layer gets butter. That's how it stays nice and flaky. Okay, so we got 1 layer of butter down, and now a layer of phyllo. Now when you're brushing with butter, you don't have to like be super precise. You don't need to get every corner edge to edge. Once it heats up, it'll spread all over it and it'll be okay. And we're adding so many layers too that it will all end up covered in butter. Okay, so I got 2 sheets down. Now I'm gonna do about 1/3 of this nut mixture sprinkled across. Once again, you don't have to be too precise or anything. This is just like an easy peasy dessert when you wanna feel fancy but don't really wanna do a whole lot of work, you know? Okay, now I'm gonna do 2 more sheets of phyllo. Now you can see I didn't cover my phyllo, but it's okay. It hasn't like dried out or anything. I just need to move quickly. The great thing about this dessert is you can do it in parts, because the phyllo you can bake in advance and it'll be okay at room temperature for about 3 days. And you can also make the custard in advance. Just assemble as needed. Napoleon as needed. I'm using strawberries today, but you can totally change up whatever fruit is in season. Go for it. Watermelon Napoleon was quite delicious. I recommend. Oh yeah, I'm doing a little tappa. Okay, last sheet. Wow, we've come so far. Since this is the final one, I am gonna make sure and get full coverage here, so we get even browning. And then afterwards, I'm gonna sprinkle it with an even layer of sugar all over. It'll just bake up and give us a little bit of shine. Now, before I proceed and do anything, I'm gonna put this phyllo away. It has survived this long uncovered, but like it's moments away from drying out. And you can totally reuse this. I wouldn't refreeze it, but wrap it up tightly and pop it in the fridge, and you can use it again. So now I'm going to cut my phyllo before baking it. I want 18 squares. Now, after it bakes, it's gonna shrink and it's almost impossible to get perfect squares because they're gonna shrink and do their own thing. So it's not perfect, guys, and that's fun. This is gonna make 6 Napoleons for 6 people, or 2 a day for 3 days for yourself. You decide. Now we bake 375 for 10 to 13 minutes. Keep an eye on it after 10 minutes because it starts to brown pretty quickly. My pastry cream is fully cooled, the phyllo is baked and cooled, and now all we have to do is assemble. Yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna start by whipping some cream. All you need to make whipped cream is cold cream. And on hot days, I'll even pop the bowl and the whisk in the fridge to make sure everything stays really cold. We whip. So you wanna keep whisking until it gets thickened like Greek yogurt, and then slow down, because at that point, you can really easily over whip. You just wanna take it until it's a nice soft peak. Our pastry cream is fully cooled. It's gotten really nice and thick. I'm just gonna use a stiff spatula to mix it up and kind of smooth it out a little bit. Now this is actually really important. It kind of has like almost a gelatinous texture. If you don't, after it sets, go in there and like mix it up. It kind of makes it feel a lot smoother on the palate when you're eating it. Now we're gonna fold in our cream. We don't wanna fully deflate the whipped cream like immediately. So I'm gonna just start with 1/3 of the whipped cream, and the first bit you get in there and you mix it up. You're just trying to balance out the texture of the two before you bring it all together. So now that we have the first third in, I'm gonna add the second third, and now I'm gonna fold. Now I wanna be gentle and try and preserve as much lightness as I can. So for folding, we're gonna cut down the middle, turn your bowl, and just fold it over, just like that. Once the cream is mostly incorporated, some streaks are okay, we're gonna add the last bit. It's better to have some streaks in there than to try and make it totally homogeneous and lose all of that lightness. I feel like it's optimal texture right when you whip the cream and fold it. But if you need to do this in advance, that's okay too. Now our cream is done. I'm gonna use strawberries in my millefeuille. I've just thinly sliced them, and I'm gonna season it to taste with a little bit of sugar and rose water. I really love rose water with berries because it's very floral and it emphasizes the florality in the berries. But if you don't like it, skip it. And also definitely don't overdo it because it can get gross. Just a splash and give it a taste. If you don't like rose water, go for like, ooh, you know, a little splash of like elderflower liqueur. That sounds nice. Little hint, just a touch of almond extract with some fresh pitted cherries. Play around with it. That's good. It's just a very delicate perfume of rose. You don't want so much that you taste it because then it kind of comes off as bitter. But this is like nice because it's like you walk by and it's like hint of rose. That's exactly what you want. So now we assemble. We're just gonna put it together. Don't really overthink it. A piece on the bottom. I'm gonna do a big dollop of my pastry cream. Now a big spoonful of our berries, right in the little divot. Whoa, huh? That's fun. A little other piece right on top. You know, I don't even try to make it straight because it won't be, so just embrace it. To keep it all from splooging, I'm just gonna support this second layer of phyllo as I smoosh. Some more berries. And we top it off. Now I'm gonna just finish it with a little powdered sugar, just to be a little fancy. And we're ready to dig in, huh? Crunchy, creamy, fresh. It's got everything. You know what would even be fun? Have your guests make their own. Have like a few different fruits, and then you can let people pick and make it like a little fun end of night thing. Shall we dig in? I find this very satisfying. Oh yeah. So crisp. You have layers of crisp with creamy. I want to bite with everything. Okay. Crunchy and creamy. And what's really nice is you get a lot of nutty pistachio flavor, and it really helps balance out that bright, fruity strawberry. So fresh, so fragrant. If you really like this recipe, head over to food52.com to check it out, and I'll see you next time.